Okay, our next speaker is Mark Gerhard from Jagex. Uh, you know that expression lawyers sometimes use? We're going to park our tanks on your lawn. Mark does that. Ask his landlords. Last time I went to visit his office, there was this huge tank outside. They've asked him to move it. He doesn't want to move it. He negotiates rough, this man. He started or previously worked. He's always worked in the tech space. He previously worked with GTech, who do all the security for all the world's lotteries. Not a job I'd necessarily leave, but then has gone on to take over and start running Jagex at a fantastic and interesting time in the life of that company. As you may know, RuneScape was sort of way ahead of the curve in terms of being a freemium MMO, sort of 10 years ahead of the curve in that space. And now that company, I'm hoping Mark's going to tell us much more than I'll say, but is expanding it on that skill set. So ladies and gentlemen, would you please welcome Mark Gerhard.
So I was lucky enough to join the Jagex family a few years ago as their Chief Technical Officer. That's the job I'm good at. For my sins, I was promoted to CEO about 3 years ago, and into incompetence, as I always like to say. But it's been an incredible journey. It's obviously a huge privilege to be able to do it. As you kind of shared my background a little bit, I've obviously always been in the tech space. Always been a techie, but also a very avid gamer, and kind of remember trying to rip off all days on the Commodore 64. Playing games for me was always just a bit of a guilty pleasure, a hobby, and it's huge that I obviously now get to do that. Thank you. For a living. I think when I talk today, I can share experience, understanding that I have from Jagex, but I think I also can put on the other hat, if you will, and speak to you as a player or as an avid gamer. And I'm always very conscious of looking at it from both perspectives, because a lot of us looking around the room, we look at this from the commercial aspect. It's about engineering and investment and all of that, and that's true to a degree, and that's part of it. But at the end of the day, if we don't have people consuming our content, it's irrelevant, it's meaningless. So, let's say I'm slightly off script, but very quickly about Jagex. We've won a few awards. We apparently do good stuff. In truth, I would like to say our successes, our profits, and all of that are a side effect of creating great games, having a team of highly passionate people who love what they do, live and breathe it, live and breathe their community. We're there to serve our community. I think they've rewarded us with their patronage and time and everything else. Let me just actually see what I'm back on script now. So we won some awards, many Guinness World Records for the biggest free MMO, as well as various things for most prolifically updated and things like that. The technology we've built that underpins all our MMOs allows us to update our content hourly, by the minute, if we so chose. We tend to do it slightly more organized fashion, weekly. But we've always done a minimum of an update per week. And when I say update, I mean significant content update and expansion to the game. And if you consider that we're now 11 years in the making, we're probably approaching 25,000, 30,000 hours of game content, scripted game content. It's probably too big, actually. And I'm going to spend a lot of time talking about the MMOs now. It just goes to MMOs. It's not actually a game. It's a living, breathing organism. It's a community. It's a virtual world. It's a universe. It's not just a game. And I think you have to, again, looking around this room, most people who understand game design, you understand how to produce the fun. That's the key ingredient. But it's all the other things that you put into that ultimately make it an MMO, or make it a successful MMO. Oopsie. So, well, I'd say outdated view of MMO gamers, but generally, if you do a straw poll of who plays MMOs, typically that'll be the image that gets conjured up, or something perhaps, and it's hard to imagine, more seedy than that. The truth is, it's actually very different, and we've obviously got reams and reams of data to back this up. The truth is, it's teens for us, up to about 25-ish, and then it kind of plateaus off. But again, it's not your traditional, what you would have thought were traditional gamers. It's a 70-30 male-female split. Would have thought it's all guys. If you look at actually, I'm running ahead of myself. Yeah, apologies. But it's the most important thing is when you're going into a space is to understand it intimately, if you hope to be successful, and if there's a outmoded view of who your target audience is, you're never going to resonate with them. The truth is that is actually who our players are, but also it's not. Again, we're based in Cambridge, England. You'd say, well, it must be people in England, right, or people in America. They all speak English as well, we think. But the truth is, it's players in 200, as of this morning, 201 countries around the world per day. It's a global phenomenon. The internet doesn't have borders. And you've got to kind of think of it. You've got to think of your content that way. I think one thing that has changed, and even from like 2-3 years ago, we would just straw poll our players and said, tell us a bit about yourself. What other games do you like to play? Or, are you a hardcore player? Are you? And actually, most of our gamers, and this is to give you a context, we're talking about 130 million all-time active uniques. Almost none of them said that they were gamers. Almost none of them thought, they are. They spend in excess of 2 hours a day. They clearly are. But I play in the browser, right? It's casual. I just found it. I play this. I don't play on consoles. And again, for us, this has always been evident. That's who we work with every day. But when you share that data with other people, they go, really? But clearly these people are. They're our players too. So how do you reach them? Given that they don't even recognize that they're gamers themselves. And I think if you were to ask, obviously you don't work at Zynga, but I think if you were to ask some of the Zynga players, what type of gamer are you? So I'm not a gamer. I just do the social thing with my friends. And I think that, understanding that the difference in that psychology is vital if you want to be able to resonate with this audience. Again, I think when you say, you've got to put this all into context. So if we say, in any month we're dealing with 10 million unique people, that's a very small country. There's no kind of one type of gameplay that's going to resonate with that. And that's patently true even in RuneScape, where every week we're producing content. We're producing it for almost, if you will, 6 types of different players who like to consume the content, do different things in very different ways. There's those who it's all about combat, PvP, and most of us, again, we kind of go, if you're going to make games, you've got to kill stuff, right? You've got to fight each other, right? I can tell you less than 10% of our players actually do that. But there's still 10%, still a very significant number. We've still got to cater for it. But there's multiple tiers of different types of entertainment experiences that our players want. And the most powerful thing is people vote with their feet. If we don't deliver it, if it doesn't remain fresh and engaging, they go somewhere else. I think we were lucky. We were one of the very early movers. So there wasn't much competition out there. I think we were second next to Sony. So there wasn't much choice. I think we've made mistakes, but we're okay. We're slightly insulated by the fact that there wasn't much other choice. Today, I can say there's thousands of medieval fantasy MMOs, browser medieval fantasy MMOs we're competing with. You can't make the same mistakes because you would hemorrhage players and they wouldn't come back. So, you know, how have we got there? Well, we've clearly been able to maintain the engagement with our players over the years. If I look at the history of our player base, yeah, we have, I don't know, probably 1 million accounts a month kind of coming in, new people being introduced. There's also people who leave the game. But by and large, actually, people stay for years. And, you know, so we kind of looked under the skin of that and said, why? Well, you know, is it just our content is groundbreaking? Is it our ability to write story? Or is it our game mechanics that are just so compelling? And actually, we discovered the truth is it's a social network, actually. People come, yes, they come for the entertainment experience. They come to chill out. They also come to socialize with their friends. Again, if you pick today, at any given point, between 10 and 15% of our players will just be hanging around in our lobby. But that's actually the stage just before the game. They're not playing the game. They're just chatting with their friends. They're just hanging around and chatting with their friends. And I think the more you start realizing, wow, and you're looking at the playing activity, you're looking at what people are doing, you start realizing, yes, it is about the game, but it's actually, no, it's not about the game. It's the community. They're here for the communality. Either they're part of a circle of friends or they want to be part of a circle of friends. They either play the game competitively, communally, or, as I say, just socially. One of the biggest spike, in terms of the content updates we did, one of the biggest spikes in traffic we ever had was actually way back in 2005 when we did an update called Player-Owned Houses, which was our very first user-generated content. Allowed you to basically build your own house in the game. So kind of think what Second Life or London was doing. We said, that's a great idea, we can do that too. And huge traffic, and we said, wow, this is the future. And then we tried, let's just understand it more. Who's doing this? Is it core gamers? And actually we discovered it wasn't. Far from it. It was actually almost, and you'll never know, because players select their gender, so you have to believe what they say they are. But what we found is almost 90% of the stated gender was female. So in effect, you can surmise that all our women were building houses. And we went, don't quite, isn't that a guy thing, engineering-ish? Yeah. Actually, no, it's not. It's a social thing, because they didn't want to run around killing dragons. Well, I'm not saying they didn't want to. But they weren't at the time. They were building the most amazing palatial real estate within the content of the game, and then inviting their friends over for house parties and saying, hey, let's go sit by the fireplace and have a meal. And we're like, we didn't design the game to do that. We're really happy that they are. And actually, you know, that since 2005, that trend has persisted. And I mean, there's so many examples of where actually something we designed to be used one way has been completely
We used the word yesterday, pivoted. If you had a complete change of direction, this was a pivot.
This was a pivot.
Yeah.
And actually, very often, content that we think will resonate with one audience completely pivots and resonates with another and is used, consumed in a completely different way. And I think there's a lesson there in terms of virtual worlds, allowing the players to do that, allowing them the self-expression. We've all seen the successes of Minecraft and others, kind of where you allow that. But again, it wasn't just how they were using the content, as in they were building houses. It was the fact that we had provided them a channel to be that much more social. We had now provided a meeting place rather than the tree in the forest, their own home, to have, you know, effectively friends and family around and enjoy a social experience. And which kind of gets me onto my next point, where, you know, this was a phenomenon we realized many years ago, and we've been working around that. Today, the big buzz is you've got to be on Facebook. It's all, the social networks. Let me not pick any one particular brand, but there is only one brand, right? It's all about the social networks. It's all about sociability. Yes, it is, but not necessarily the platform. It's the experiences and the engagement that sits underneath that. That's vital. That's vital for the continued growth of your communities, rather than basically giving your business, your content, to someone else. So Facebook, I think, is kind of catapulted into, I guess, even just popular culture now, because it's provided a channel for people to be able to share their content, be it their photos, their stories, whatever else, and be more social. Again, I mean, this is not a new phenomenon in terms of gaming. I can go back to some of the very first games, which were multiplayer, as in 2 players, and you could sit on either end of the keyboard. But they were so successful because you could share that creative, fun experience. And all we've done with MMOs is we've just put that on steroids, kind of taken it to the greatest extent we can. And I think we're now seeing with the likes of, and by the way, please feel free to challenge me on all of this. As I say, I'd love to make this interactive as we can. But we're seeing phenomenons like Farmville, Cityville, and things like that, and people are going, "Wow, who would have known that people, lots of people want to get together and collaborate?" Well, could have told you that 11 years ago with RuneScape, and actually, so could many other games. I think one of the differences, if we look at this, is it almost seems like it's going full circle, and invariably, actually, if you look at history, these things do. The console space, if you will, if I can call it the core space, seems to be moving to the center. It's more about multiplayer, and I would say, again, multiplayer underpins, it's more about sociability. And even the social space is now saying, well, we need to move just beyond a channel to chat, and we need to have content because we've got to keep people coming back. So, if I had to look into a crystal ball, I would say that people on the right will be moving very much to the center very, very soon, if not already. Question, what does that mean then for you guys if they are doing it themselves, et cetera, et cetera? And I think the big question is it's that they've been fantastic at positioning, you need us, we are the social network. But the truth is you can't own, patent, trademark, whatever, sociability between people. And you can provide that, we provide that in our content. I think it's, do you provide enough of it, and is it accessible enough and intuitive enough and everything else to really be pervasive? And to me, that's the secret sauce. Understanding that and getting that bit right gets you to where I'd like to say we are today. And maybe one of the things I should have touched on before, and I've said this before in the past, but until about a year ago, and we've had Wendy now join us and head up our marketing team, which is terrific, but roughly until a year ago, everything we'd done was completely, I want to say accidental, but it wasn't. It was viral, organic growth. We didn't have a sales team, a marketing team, PR, biz dev. As the CTO, I was the most commercially minded guy, so they said, you do it. And that was it, team of one. We basically let our players build the company. Our players built the community. And again, it's because we had the basic set of tools, and obviously over time we've refined that and we've amplified that, but we've had the basic set of tools to allow them to be social and communal, which leads to virality at the end of the day. So if I say, looking back at our 11-year history, 95% of that was effectively without I would say management overhead, but all the other signs of customer acquisition and retention and everything else was completely viral, organic. And the game was the framework. The game was the environment, the glue, that kind of kept all these bits together. And I don't think that bit is unreplicable, as we've just seen with Facebook and others. It's just about providing it in an accessible, intuitive, all-encompassing way. So we've seen a lot more people are thinking about this. A lot more people are moving into this space. And there's some success stories, but I think there's probably far more tragedies. And I don't want to jump to the conclusion, but the truth is you have to really understand this. You have to understand the blueprint or the DNA of sociability and everything else if you want to do it really well. You can't just buy it. And I think we've sadly seen very big publishers going, oh, they're online, buy. Funnily enough, it doesn't work. The solution here is so deeply understanding it and then implementing that in a relevant way to the content that you've produced. But I do think there's and the substance of this conference has largely been talking about this. What I understand from most of you in the room, very little of what I'm saying is coming as news that needs to be multiplayer, needs to be more social, needs to be more accessible. Hey, it needs to include women, needs to, all this crazy thing that would have been crazy talk a few years ago. People over 25, no way. The understanding of this room needs to change the modus operandi today is a given. Into what? I think there's a feeling that it's online, yes, it's multiplayer and all of that, and all of that's correct, but how? Is it a knee-jerk response saying, all change, it's about Facebook? We need to become Zynga, and I caution you not to. Or is it saying, let's really understand what are the drivers behind this, and then make intelligent, measured decisions towards all of this. And, I can say we've made many mistakes along the way. The one thing we've been very cautious to always do is learn from those, and also sometimes let them bake in. Kind of make a decision, let's sit by it, let's give it some time to really understand the impact of this. One of the biggest things we do is listen to our community. Not as in, please send us your feedback, but we've actually got a team, an army of people who talk to our players every single day. We talk to them in-game, we talk to them on our own YouTube channels, Facebook pages, fan sites, their fan sites, our forums, and that's a dialogue that's been going on for some 10 years. Part of that is taking ideas out about how to evolve the content, how to evolve the game. Part of it is also actually slightly divisive. And if we did everything our players were asking us for, we wouldn't have a game called RuneScape today. So it's understanding that. And sometimes we haven't got that right. And we have actually shot ourselves in both feet. Sometimes we've had to actually undo those things. Bringing back the wilderness, which we did in January of this year, was one of those really big things. We had issues with real-world trading, gold farming, botting, because the game has value, the game has currency. And we said, as a very technical approach was, let's just remove the whole component out, let's just rip it out, easy. So we did. And we had clearly solved the problem, but we'd actually created another problem, as in people liked the ability to free trade. By so doing, we actually had neutered part of the sociability, the part of almost the gifting phenomenon that you now see so prevalent on Facebook. People like to say to a friend who's just joined, hey, let me help you out. Here's 100 gold, here's a sword, let's go do something together. Whereas we had taken away that ability because it was a small, micro-nefarious portion of the community was abusing that. And the answer was actually, and by the way, and that really hurt our numbers. So, to about 30%. But still, we gave it a good year. I said, hang on, is this a current phenomenon? Is that just because people today say, we don't like it, but the players of tomorrow, we're building the game for the long term, we do everything for the long term, for them it will be a better experience. So do we just have to ride the storm out? Despite the pain we're feeling, do we just have to be rebut? And yes, we should. The numbers are saying, it's wrong. I'm saying, but wait, And in truth, I can give you other examples. If we responded to every one of those numbers, again, we wouldn't have a game called RuneScape today. We very often put things through where actually, on reflection, after the noise and everything else had kind of died down, we've realized that was exactly the right thing to do. And I mean, when I first joined the family, it was a case of I looked at every data source I could get. I was frantically reading the forums about everything. And I kind of, from that, I kind of, whew, there's a lot of angry people out there. It's just angry. And you could do anything. You could do nice stuff. You could just say, there you go, all of that's free. Oh, you're just trying to buy our affection. Okay, take it away. Oh, you've taken away something you've given, you bastards. And actually realize there's actually part of the community you can never please. First note. The second was some of the most vocal voices, I've got another name for them, starts with troll, we're always going to be trolls. And we're always going to be violently opposed to this or that, or have strong views about this. And I kind of, after about 6 months of scratching my head, kind of shared this problem with the team and said, guys, how do you make content decisions? I mean, obviously I wasn't making any. I know where my strengths and weaknesses are. I'm certainly not making content decisions. But how do you make decisions? How do you know what's going to work, what's not? And I said, well, because I'm reading all of this and it sounds like everything you're doing is bad, but clearly it's not. How do you make those decisions? I said, well, obviously don't feed the trolls, but if someone's in-game playing the content, not on the forums, it works. Those who love it are completely silent. And yes, there's always that percentage that is vocal. If we don't see enough people consuming the content, if the game almost isn't silent enough, then we've got it wrong. You go like, wow, we're making data decisions in the absence of data. Interesting. The reason I share that, by the way, is not that that's how we all should be running our businesses tomorrow. More that there's so much to be said for really, really deeply understanding it. I think that's the essence of what I'd leave is that it's not as that there's data experts here, there's I guess acquisition experts here, there's all of those functions and they all have a role. And I would say no one of them in their own has the answer. Part of it is quantitative, qualitative, part of it is gut, part of it is just doing the right thing, even though it doesn't seem commercially smart, etc., etc., etc. But all of the answers to this actually can be found when you speak to your community, not just to the trolls or the people that are most vocal, but to everyone, every single day for 10 years. And you know what? You get the same answers all the way through, which starts building up your confidence and your ability to make the right decisions moving forward. But I think that's probably one of the phenomenons that is the least well understood in this room. Talk to the player, but there's too many. I'm worried about 120 million. You guys might be worried about 100,000 or a million. How do you speak to all of them? And the truth is, through many channels, with expert teams, you create the forums, you stimulate the debates, you sometimes kick the nest. And yes, it takes a whole lot of thought. It is head splitting. It's almost easier to default back into let's just manage the process, let's just produce the content, let's just promote it. It takes an enormous amount of time, and it is a never-ending job. But that's the bit that's yet to be done. That's the bit that's not being done well. And the more you do that, the better you understand your communities, the more effective you become at building those communities, and ultimately making your community a megaphone for your products, as they have been for RuneScape over the last 10 years. And I'm very happy to say, despite some of our shooting ourselves in the foot over time, the game continues to grow. And I think that says a lot. 10 years, 11 years ago, there were 2 of us. World of Warcraft came along in 2004, there were 3. And it started building up. Now there's thousands. And we're all, at the end of the day, we're all competing for the same thing, people's time. If someone's watching a film for 4 hours, they're not playing your game for 4 hours. They're playing my game for 4 hours, they can't be playing yours for 4 hours. So there's this, I guess the good news is people don't have 4 hours anymore. And it's being condensed down into smaller chunks of time. There's more choice, there's more content, and people tend to do many things at once, or dip between them. Obviously, content you design has to support that. But the... damn it, I've just forgotten what I was going to say. What was the last thing I said? It's a test.
Mutually exclusive, use of time.
It's a test.
This is a test. I'm taking notes.
Pretty rough to hit us with a test this early.
It is. Well, and for me too.
I tell you what, if I could ask you a question, which has just been burning in my mind for 10 minutes. Long history in this area that new people are. Cheers. Long history in this area that new people are pouring into now, and I guess in some ways Blizzard have sort of moved to a model closer to yours very recently. You must have. You're running a business at the same time as serving this community as beautifully and affectionately as you do. You must have experimented with sliding the moment, the monetization moment, the subscription moment around a bit, and that's, you know, you've had a 10-year run at that and been allowed to make some mistakes in that area, and I wondered if you chose to reflect on that. I'm not asking for conversion rates or anything like that. It's just you must have tried a few things over the years, and what was good and what was bad. That's all.
We've certainly thought about it, and we've certainly heavily debated it. We've actually never experimented with it on RuneScape. We did say there's clearly opportunities within the micropayment space. We need to understand that. Do we take effectively the family silver and experiment? That felt dangerous. So we said, but we still got to find out. We can't just not know. We had conversations with players. How do you feel about this? We got an amazingly strong and oppositional voice to that. So we said, okay, and maybe that's not a surprise. I mean, asking, would you like to pay more? Most people would say no. But nevertheless, we said, but we still got to know. And that's actually why we got into the third-party publishing part about 2-3 years ago with War of Legends, because it was a micropayment game exclusively. And it came from a place where they were doing, I mean, it was well established in China already, but a part of the world that had effectively pioneered it or were doing it the best, and many things that we're doing are still catching up with that. And we got an enormous, and the game is very successful, we got an enormous amount of data out of it, deep understanding of it, an understanding of the psychology of it, and it's very, very different to a subscription game. And that did two things. It told us we should do more of this. We should build this into our own content. It's clearly an opportunity here, and now we understand it. It also told us it's so fundamentally different to what we've already got, we would break what we've got if we tried to retrofit it. So don't. And there has been a tension, because you kind of look at the opportunity we have today and you go, wow, that could be 5x if we just did it. But at the same time you go, but it would hurt the lore. It's not fundamentally, you know, we've got this community that's grown up with the game of what it is today for years. You know, I'd probably say the average playtime for someone is maybe 6 years, 5 years. It's big, it's long. And we would never want to hurt that. You know, again, for us, it's about the community first. So, however, you know, like with Transformers and other MMOs we're making, should that be a component of it? Yes. But I would say, look, and this is a generic point, I'd say this, no matter what monetization or compensation we're having, I don't think there's any one particular, it's subscriptions over micro. There's no answer there. There's pro and con on each. I think, by the way, this is going full circle. And we're seeing now places that pioneered it, like China, moving to subscription models. And I think I'll go full circle here too. But I think the most important thing is the game, and I always start with that first, the game has to play well to the monetization method you want to put to it. And rather than, whatever we do, it has to be microtransactions. Go make a game that features microtransactions. I would find that insipid. And I think many people have done that, and I think you've seen how the community have voted with it. It's with their feet. And so I think if it's, whatever it is, if it's additive to the game, it will work really well. And I think if it's a commercial afterthought, I think it's poison. Yeah, so you know, you're right. We're seeing World of Warcraft starting to move to a partial free-to-play model. It's interesting. You know, we be careful what I say now. I believe we're the only MMO that's continuing to grow, despite our age, if you will. So I think for some, that may be a response to issues rather than does this really enhance the experience or whatever. And it'll be interesting to see how it plays out anyway. One of the big things we've seen, and again, I'm conscious that I'm running out of time. How much time do I have?
You are on until 11:30.
I'm sorry, guys. Only 30 more minutes to go. One of the things we've seen work really, really well for us, not just in our own content, but we're seeing a real change in the space, and I want to share some of my thinking behind that, is the growth of what we call casual games. By the way, I wouldn't describe any of those more or less casual than the type of content we used to play 15 years ago. I think it's, you take Angry Birds, to me, it's Worms, right? Just more dumbed down, or more mass market. The mechanic isn't fundamentally different or revolutionary. It's just less hardcore, and therefore my wife can play it, and my kid can play it, and so can I. And actually now we have a great social experience because the three of us all consume the same content and can talk about it. And the same true of Farmville and stuff. But the really exciting bit to me and moving forward is the area around user-generated content. And we've seen this phenomenon with Minecraft and how it's, not sure if you guys know the numbers behind it. I'm not sure if I should be sharing them, but it's jaw-dropping. It truly is, and it's one to watch. Not just Minecraft, but that entire phenomenon. I think we saw it very early with Second Life and stuff, and I think everyone said this is the future, but funnily enough, it didn't grow. I don't think it ever grew like beyond 250,000 subscribers or something like that. It didn't achieve the level of scale we all suspected. And I feel that's really just because it was too difficult. It was too difficult for this room to produce content for it. I might be able to produce it, and people go, yeah, of course, because you're a programmer, right? But that's kind of what it took, and that's why it became niche, that's why it became small. But if you can take user-generated content, effectively self-expression, and make it mass market, that's scary. As in how successful it can be. And to me, again, there's multiple dimensions to this, but in terms of user-generated content, number one, whatever I create, I'm proud of, right? It's mine, it's beautiful. It's like your children. It doesn't matter if they're ugly, you still think they're beautiful. And of course, they're all smart and everything else as well. The same is true of whatever game I've just created. So I'm going to be a megaphone for my Minecraft world. I'm going to get every friend, anyone I know, to come play my content and tell me what they think. In terms of competitive nature, my friends will go, that's pretty smart. Well, maybe that says dumb. It doesn't matter. I'm going to make something better. And all of a sudden, there's a massive viral effect just coming out of that going, look at this, no, look at this, but this is better, but what about this? And as a developer, all you've done, you've provided the tools for people to produce their own fun. There's no better scalable business model than that. But to me, again, it comes back to the underlying essence. It's about sociability. It is, whatever I'm producing, I can now have 20 of my friends romp around in this world we've just created, and we can continue developing it. We can compete, and I think right now it's pure user-generated content. I think soon there'll be user-generated content with actual gameplay. Should you be just bouncing around this world and going, that's cool, or should you be bouncing around and throwing grenades at each other and trying to dig out under each other's tunnels? Who knows? Maybe you should. And I think that's a natural step. We've seen how well it's worked within RuneScape. And again, it's not just that it's allowing the community to produce their own content. It's allowing them to express themselves. And again, I think if you look at what Twitter does and Facebook and everything else, it's the same thing. It's a channel to be able to communicate. Now, again, it's not. I think a lot of people look at those and go, "We've got to be on it." But to me, it's kind of like, what's the mechanic underneath it? Why does Twitter work? Why does Facebook work? What's it actually doing? What's it doing for me? How do I feel when I'm using the product? And then saying, let me capture the essence of that and apply it to my own content. Actually, I had a very, very important thing here to say, which is, and I haven't prefaced it yet, but one of the things that for the health of this industry, and we live and breathe this every single day. As soon as you stand still, you become number two. We kind of, what we've done has been tremendous, but we know it's an arms race. We know people can catch up. So the only thing to do is remain a moving target. The only thing to do is to continue to evolve and develop beyond. So everyone else is playing second. Everyone else is catching up. The one thing that I worry about with the industry today is not the lack of creativity. I think we're probably the best in the world at that. I think it's the lack of innovation, as in game design, game mechanics, moving outside of just, I'm going to make an FPS, I'm going to put it on that platform. Because look, Call of Duty was so successful, I can do better than that. And I think there's so much kind of, I don't want to say copying because it's being unfair, but kind of almost siloing. This game was successful because of this. RuneScape was successful because of that. And if we just repeat that formula, we'll be successful too. And the truth is you won't. You'll be number two. If you're lucky. Or 5, 6, wherever. You'll only ever be a copy of. And I'm not sure if the issue is because of the way these things are funded. It's very difficult to say, hey, I need X because I want to go build something that's never been done before. I think that probably fills people with fear. Go, what means it's never been done before? How much do you want? No. There's a reason it's never been done before. It's not going to work. But the truth is, unless you try new things, unless you do new things, as we've done with RuneScape continually, not just every week, but even within the framework of the game, you will die. You'll start standing still. People will eclipse you. There's so much content now that's the same. It's just like. You see new MMOs coming to market and say, it's just like World of Warcraft, but better. Or, and you're kind of like, as a player, putting on the other hat, do I want to play a game that's just like? But no, I want something completely different. I want something that's stimulating, engaging for me. And if I kind of go back to our early days where we kind of games 0.10, every single bit of content that came out, as limited as those devices were, was novel, was unique, was a different experience. You may have liked some and not others. But the industry was ripe with innovation. Everything was different. And it was really healthy. Not only did that foment more creativity, but it was a really healthy place for players. Where, be it Farmville, Cityville, I think there's only so many villes you can do before players go, kind of sick of Ville. I've done all the Ville I can. And, this is going to be a problem. And I'm not poking fingers here at Zenga. It's the guys in the console space. Everyone is producing content this is just like. This is an RTS. This is a MMO FPS or RPG, and it sits in such perfect, neat little silos that you go, yes, it's easy to describe. It's easy to say competitive advantages against this product or this product or this product, which it's analogous to. But from a consumer perspective, it's vanilla. It's actually fundamentally no different in terms of gameplay to exactly all the other comparisons you just made. And I think that's unhealthy for the industry. It's unhealthy for consumers. And as a result, I think we're also seeing them, again, moving out of this space into places which are more innovative. It's a phenomenon, I think, that's underpinned the success of the iPhone and stuff. It's because, despite if you like the device because it's silver or not, for me, I'm going, almost everything I download is novel. Is yes, there's lots of Me Too clones, but every day I can get a list of 100 games where I just go, wow, this is smart. This is so. I love the way they do. I love the way they're thinking about this. I love the way they're using the environment. And I think it's that. It's really that innovation that's created such a healthy mobile market. Whereas in our space, and maybe that's because the content's cheaper to produce, and that's a separate point. We should get to that. But that's vital. So, what does it take to make a successful MMO? Of course, it's about sociability. It's all about the community. It's about the content you build and the virality of that. But it's also about the innovation. It's about, as I say, we're producing content every week. If we produce the same content 2-3 weeks in a row, I assure you there won't be players there the fourth week. We have to keep them engaged. We have to keep evolving them through the lore. And I don't think that's unique to MMOs. I don't think it's unique to jagex. I think that's what we all have to do. If you want to build something for the long term, it is about starting that relationship and building on that and building on that. And I'll say one of the most powerful ways to do that on innovation is also, again, going full circle, listening to your community. Your own community consumes a lot of content. Your own community has a lot of tremendous ideas. And of course, the hardest part is filtering the wheat from the chaff. But you'll never ever, if you even ask the question, you'll never be short of ideas coming back from the guys as to where to take the game or the lore or anything else. But in terms of user-generated content, I really think that aside from the world going massively multiplayer, I think user-generated is a given. I'm very happy to say that as of 2 weeks ago, I think we're the first, we launched an update called Citadels, which now allows our players to create their own battlefields in RuneScape, which again, kind of no other MMO has done. Now, we didn't do that because we said no other MMOs do it. We did that because we said this would be awesome for gameplay. Part of the camp could have said, actually, but it's risky. It hasn't been done before. Do you really want to do it? Why don't we look at WoW's doing? But the truth is, if we did what WoW was doing, we'd just be a crap copy of WoW, right? And we want to be an awesome RuneScape. So, we've always, as I say, even had that innovation within the heart of the business, within the family silver. We've still said, we don't know if this will resonate, but we've still got to do it. We've still got to find out. We've still got to do different things to what everyone else is doing. And I know people, there's a whole lot of, everyone's saying, you've got to be on Facebook now. How can you have a game and not be on, but we're our own social network anyway. Why would we, I love what Facebook's doing, great. But we're also our own social network. Do I need Facebook to be more social? No. And if I do, I need to adapt my content to fill that gap rather than outsource effectively my sociability. Have I not been sufficiently controversial enough? I see there's no questions coming back.
I've got a question.
Hit me.
So you were talking about, when you update, there's, voices of opposition from within the forums, and you said, sometimes you just got to go with your gut, and you've got to know that, you're right in your update. But at what stage do you realise that the voices of opposition against your update are getting too large, and perhaps you have made a mistake? At what point do you realise that?
I think, look, it's a great question, and I really wish there was a binary answer to say it's this. I think if I paint out what the hazards are, then you can probably work out how to remedy. The hazards are a knee-jerk response to whatever that feedback is. So you do an update, and you get flamed because everyone says this is the worst update ever. Every week is the worst update ever for us. Crazy thing that the game keeps growing. So we always give it time, no matter what, and even sometimes we've known we've made a mistake, but the underlying principles are always first. Just understand it. Even if actually we think it's wrong for these reasons, let's really understand it. Let's give it enough time to bake out, and then make the decision. And sometimes we've found, whilst the decision was right, our understanding of it was actually wrong. And only having given more time, we were able to really, it didn't change the decision that it needs to be removed, but our understanding of why was different. And the vital bit is the more you understand why, so not just the data tells me to do that, so I did it, but why did the data tell me that? Next time, you don't make the same mistake because you actually have a deep understanding of the symptom rather than just the cause. But the second part is if you talk wider than just the community giving feedback. So yes, there's X people who've said this, and you've said, okay, let's give it some time, just understand it. At the same time, let's talk to them, let's really understand the motivations behind it. At the same time, we're also saying there's people who are not talking to us, but let's go find them. We're seeing X% of our population are consuming this right now. So let's ask, what did you just enjoy about this? We've seen you've spent so much time here, and why? Now that's hard. I mean, that takes a lot of man hours to do. So we've been blessed in that we have so much data. We actually now can say we have certain baselines for how much time people spend on something, and if it's less than this, there's obviously an issue with it. The way our games are designed is if every single bit, everything's server-side. The client is just rendering the experience and taking controller input. So we store everything. You could leave the game today facing this way, holding an axe, and you can come back 6 years later and just carry on. We can replay your last 200, whatever it is. We keep everything, absolutely everything. We've built our own file system to be able to store that type of data on commodity hardware, not super SANs and stuff like that. So there's a ton of engineering involved in this too, but as a result, we can go back and say, hang on, even within this content, 48% of the people didn't pick up the axe or spot this. Why? It's obviously too difficult. Let's move the axe here. Let's find out. And so even within the content, we improve the flow, but we can say as a meta view, actually, we're still only X% are going through this versus the following 8. We would have expected that. And again, it's not just saying, you can't just do it on a spreadsheet in a binary way like that, because you've got to say, well, this is high-level content. There is only a community of this size who have the levels to be able to do this. So we're expecting a different data pattern here than we would at entry-level content, where you would have masses who could effectively achieve it. So it's a slightly complex way of answering the question. As I say, I think it's more about pointing out where the hazards are, and you'll get the right answer, than be able to say, well, just always ignore the trolls, or actually just only ask the high-level players because they always know, or ask the new guys because they're your future customers. There isn't an answer as simple as that. But I think very often we've also got to an impasse where we don't have data either way. We don't have an opinion from the community either way. And actually we've just got to say, what really would be good for the long term of the game? And then that's the decision we make. What's good for the community? That's the decision we make. And I think we've also been quite lucky with a few of those decisions along the way. Another question is there?
Mark, thanks very much for a very, very passionate and detailed insight into how you work there. You also mentioned about various genres of games and stuff. I want to ask you a question, which is trying to get a sort of generalization. If you inhabit the world of MMOs, how would you, if you were asked, what types of MMOs are there out there, and how would you classify them if you had to sort of boil them down to, I don't know, maybe half a dozen or 10 different classifications? I know I've tried to do that, and I think of the kind of way in which the game appeals to hardcore or casual, and then I try to think of how they relate back to the old ways in which we classify games like RTS or FPS or whatever. But I'm just interested to know, because you probably, it sounds like you've probably built up an idea in your own head, and maybe you might like to share that with us.
Yes, so again, sadly, probably like most of my answers, there isn't a short answer to that. There's clearly differentiators on game mechanic between an MMO, FPS, RTS, a real-time strategy, first-person shooter, role-playing game. Kind of the expectation of what an FPS is pretty well set. Between the genres of each, kind of, would I say, I think you could segment, if you wanted to, you could segment it further and say, well, there's sci-fi RPGs and fantasy. I think that's less relevant. I think there's players of types like certain experiences. As in, if you like puzzles and solving, then kind of your real-time strategy game or persistent world games will probably resonate very well. If you like adventure, exploration, discovery, kind of RPGs, if done right, will probably resonate perfectly. If you just want to get in and blow stuff up, FPS is great. And it doesn't matter then if it's Call of Duty or World of Tanks. Kind of, I just want to get in and have one-on-one combat or team v team combat. But I think already it's dangerous to silo it. So clearly there's distinct categories, and there's certain people who like certain categories more than others, you might say. But one of the secrets of RuneScape and the way we design most of our content is to say, let's not, yes, RuneScape is an MMORPG, but let's not silo it to just that. So we want pure PvP elements. We want pure strategy elements. We want quest, adventure, exploration elements too. And as I said earlier, we effectively within the game cater for 6 different types of players currently. And we're bringing in a 7th dimension with user-generated content as well. And I think if we thought even more just about the social aspects, ignore the game and just call the game a veneer, the environment and the way to make that more compelling, retentive, social, could maybe even make it an 8th. So I would say it's more about what are the key drivers. We know, and again, I kind of almost go back to myself as a player. I play most of those games anyway. I don't sit in any particular vertical. I like probably, maybe this is a guy thing, I like the action type stuff a bit more than the kind of resource building, farming type stuff. Having said that, actually, depending on the mood, and maybe it's a bit like music, you'll appreciate different things at different times. And I think having content that allows you to, gives you that variety and choice, of course, and there's design decisions like how big is that then, therefore, and to what extent do you start here first and evolve into it. There's lots of logistical challenges around that, but having content that effectively is allowing you to resonate with a lot of people, and hence mass market, is probably more important than saying of the MMO genres, these are more successful. I mean, what is a fact today, MMORPGs are multiples more successful than MMO FPSs. There's yet to be one of. And I think part of that is an engineering challenge of computation and all of those other things, but you can solve those. Those aren't difficult to solve. But there's yet to be a breakthrough bit of content there. Everyone goes, wow, that set the new standard for MMO FPSs, or MMO RTS is probably second to that, kind of in terms of where the populations are today. But I wouldn't make any decisions, business decisions on that. I would say, actually, if anything, there's probably a real opportunity here because it hasn't been done well. There hasn't been breakthrough content yet because there's typically, photocopying of content, and the assets are a veneer and you just change them for something else.
Hello. That leads me to a sort of rider on there, which is where you think the MMO segment of the industry is going. You've seen the evolution of certain parts of it. I think what's happened with the German companies is interesting. Interestingly, they appear to keep their players for 6 to 7 months on the big point, and sort of, and you're keeping them for
years.
That in years.
Well, and exactly on the extreme end, you might say Zynga keeps them for days or weeks. And again, I think there's different. When you're building a relationship with your players for years, you operate one way. I think if you're thinking about players for months, you have different modus operandi. I think when you're thinking hours, you're completely different. So for us, I would say, for Zynga, I would say, given that you touch players for minutes, and in those minutes, it's about monetization and extraction of wealth. It's all about BI. It's all about, I don't care about the game lore and stuff. Again, I don't get sued for this, but I don't know if Farmville has a lore. Who cares? But what does matter is that more people do this and buy this item over that item. So having real-time analytics that tell you, 17% go left, 21 go right, the balance goes north, so we must put an action, a buying point here, is vital. As in, you run your game, it could be anything. It doesn't matter what the content is or what the game mechanic is. You're just looking at data and saying, oh, there's more people here. Oh, there's people here not doing anything. Monetize, put a hook here. You've got to buy this to get there. You've got a gift to get to the next level. And actually, I'd say you don't have to be a game designer. I don't think you have to be particularly creative. It's a deep analytical function because your interface is so small, your volume is so high. You don't get to have a relationship with your player. It's just about those touch points and maximization. At this point, so when you're creating, if we move to the RuneScape component, when you're creating a relationship for years, it's not just about your lore and the depth of your story. It's about how they perceive you as an organization. It's about your actual relationship with them. It's about letting them come and be part of your community, your family. Come visit us. We're going to have a fanfare in October. It's called RuneFest. Come. And people are going, I expect that because RuneScape is a part of my life, and I want to meet other members of my community that I know online, and but they're in Germany, I'm in America, so we'll come together at RuneFest and meet. That's vital. When you're kind of the big point guys in the middle, like that's an investment you would never make. Why would you? That may only pay dividends in 10 years' time. Will we even be around then? Who knows? So you treat that very differently, and I would say almost they sit halfway between, as in they're far more aggressive on monetization, analytics, but there is actually still more substance and form to the content they produce. Actually, there is slightly more core gaming, if you will. So yeah, I mean, I'm not sure if that answers your question, but I think the reality is, depending what it is, you're going to treat it differently, and your bias will sit in different places.
So, would you sort of say that the MMO space is still an uncharted kind of landscape?
I think certainly. I think it's the starting foundation moving forward. I think it has the scale, it has the sociability. It has the variety, but you're absolutely right. It is still very uncharted in so many aspects where, again, if I kind of go back to the more traditional space, it's probably almost been overdone. But I think this is, as I say, I think everyone in this room recognizes we're going online. I think everyone recognizes multiplayer is a substantial component. Obviously, why? Because it's social. So that's what MMOs are already. As in that you don't have an MMO if you don't have all of that as well. So I pretty much feel that it is a baseline that's going to be evolved from here on out. The question is how well and how innovative and on what. Is it just online? Is it just the browser? Is the future actually everywhere? And I would say it is. I would say don't just if we call Facebook a platform or a 360 a platform. Don't just pick a platform. Because are your population on just one platform? And can you be a social network on just one platform? I don't think you can't. I think you've got to be on everything. Is there tools and tech that lets you be on everything? Code once and not yet. Well, in a few months we hopefully give it to you. But there's I think those are big decisions too. It's not just about the future as MMOs. Yes, the future, I think it is. Not just because we make them, but because I'm a big part of the space and I consume content on all the devices. But I feel the essence of what it is and the lessons that have been learned to make them successful are really what's needed from the gaming industry going forward. But it's making sure those bets we place are on the right things at the right time. And that's a challenge. Those are open questions. How much, and we've had these debates internally, clearly, we need to be mobile. It's an extension of our population. But is that a game port? Does that mean, do we actually move RuneScape mobile? Do we just augment the game with certain key features to not dilute the core essence over here? And that's crucially, and we need to answer that. Crucially, the thing to say is not to say like whatever it is, we've got to be on mobile. It's all about iOS. Go, go, go. It's really understanding it. And that may mean, actually, we're not the first mover. May mean someone else needs to forge the first way. But for us, it's more important that the decisions we make are right and considered. Because at the same time, remember, we have a living, breathing organism, almost country, that we're managing over here. And all of these innovations we make, we want to be additive to the community. Not fragment, not segment. I mean, we'd built tech 3-4 years ago where we spoke to Microsoft, Nintendo, Sony, and said, guys, we can put our game on your device. We're ready. And they're like, no, you're not developers yet. I said, no, we wrote our own software parser. We don't need your SDKs. It's good. We're ready to go. And at the time, free to play was like, you're crazy. Okay, €5. It's like it was free. Why would someone pay $5? You're shooting yourself in the foot. Pay €5 on your device or free on the browser. It doesn't make sense. Sony was ahead of that and said, actually, we get free. But all three said, okay, but we won't let this console play with that console. Well, there's no gaming advantage. It's not like Twitch gaming where this console will appear inferior to this one because of its computational power or anything. It will be the same experience. It's all server-side for us anyway. It's all in the cloud anyway. We're just rendering the experience. We're just using the internet connection. And we're like, yeah, but we can't let the Microsoft community play with the Sony community. Like, okay, then we can't be on your device because we just don't care. We're not going to fragment our community for the opportunity of X million players. Of course, I'd love those X million players. They'd be good for our community. But at the expense, to fracture it, no. Because you almost become the disease you're trying to solve. So, I think, now again, I think the landscape will change. I think the issues they have here means they're going to liberate the platforms, they're going to open it up more. It's just a matter of time. But, it is about, again, we had the idea, very engineering-wise. We said, let's just build it first and we'll have a conversation later. We could have obviously saved ourselves some engineering time if we had not done that. But I guess we don't want to promise anything we can't do. So that's always been us. But now, as I say, this will go full circle and we'll be well-placed to be on all devices soon if we agree with everyone else that we can have a global community.
Very interesting, thank you.
Thank you.
Excuse me, Nick Parker. I'm going to try to appeal to your better half, and I'm sure that she's not your partner. I'm talking about better side of your personality, and I'm sure which is probably quite a significant side, as we'd all agree here. You're a nice chap, and also we're all British in the room. And
I sense a butt.
And you're a success story in driving revenues and people to quite a significant population. We're all British here. Can you, on behalf of us, could you just sort of divulge within a few percentage points roughly what your conversion rates are?
No. What I can say is they're probably the lowest in the industry. And despite that we're successful, what we realized, kind of complete viral organic growth, is no one ever knew. You asked the question about the funnel and conversion. Until 12 months ago, we didn't even know what the word meant. I mean, we understood it intellectually, but not in the context of the business. And since we've actually had a team who now thinks about that and goes, I'm going to spend money to get a player, this really matters. We thought, let's find out. And we actually said, wow, that's bad. And we're still successful. Obviously, we're very excited about that notion because we go, actually, improving this and using pretty standard science that's well understood in the space, we can make a substantial difference. We can really, really change the space when we get serious about it. But then we're saying, hey, look, so we should do that. And we are. We've been working on that for the last year. We're also saying, but we've still got to make groundbreaking content over here. So where does the team spend their time? Well, the truth is on both. And it means we'll take a while to play through. But I certainly think come 2012 will be a very serious force to be reckoned with.
So Heike at Big Point said it will target about 10%. So you're saying that it's a lot less than 10% currently?
It might even be less than single digit.
Okay, thank you very much anyway. How many beers?
Andy.
Do you get any? You say that you kind of. Thanks. You say your sort of users tend to fall away kind of post 25. Have you seen any? Or maybe I've got that wrong.
In terms of where the mass is, if you kind of had to paint the landscape of, I mean, in truth, it's from 13 to really 65.
Yeah.
Okay. But that's the small end of the bell. Kind of the weight sits around about 16 to 18, two really big spikes, and then kind of 21, and then it kind of chisels down. But I would say if you probably say like 80% of the mass of the player population is between 13 to 25. But What we are finding, which is heartening, is that population ages almost year on year, and that's moving out. So it's not a case of 25 it drops, but it's actually just shifting.
And do you ever get people coming back?
Yes, all the time. We see it again. The way we run the game is every single account is kept forever. So as I say, you can come in 11 years later, and you would have been doing what you're doing, holding on, still be the dragon waiting for you to finish what you were about to do. And we're very proud of that. No one else does that. People put a lot of time into their accounts, and I see time and money. It's the same thing. It's value. So we want to respect that value they've created. But yes, I mean, people do. And the crazy thing is, I mean, whilst I'll talk about like 10 million this month, if I look at a 3-month period, that could be 25. It's not 10, 10, 10. It's 25. As in people dip in and dip out. There's people who've literally haven't come back for 2-3 years. And we saw at the Return of the Wilderness just this mass, like, I've got to be there for the event. And they were there for the event. And they ran up and down the street shouting, worst update ever, as we expected. And they said, great, thank you for that. See you next year. Great. So yes, I mean, what we're finding is, I mean, we've never had things like members' loyalty programs and all of that, which we've only recently implemented. So like, Wendy helped me 2 months ago, 3 months ago. And I think certainly it's safe to say more than 50% of our community are already on that program. Maybe in excess of that. So there's things we didn't worry about the funnel in, we didn't worry about the funnel out. We just said, is the game fun? And I asked a very dumb question. My first job as CEO was saying, what's the percentage of people exiting our game? And I got a percent, I think it was 22% or something like that. I went, that's a lot. What was it last year? 22%. What about 2005? 22%. It's excellent, hasn't changed. The question I should have asked is, what's the number? Because that's millions. And all of a sudden we said, wow, we make a 2 or 3% difference on retention, or a 1 or 2% difference on acquisition. Oh, wow. I mean, we're growing, but the graph looks very different. And we went, okay. And it took us a while for that to bake through, because we tweaked here in the middle, we tweaked here and said, nothing's made a difference. And again, it's kind of, for us it was data 1.0. We kind of, for the first time ever, we understood what players did. We knew where they were, where they got stuck. We helped them through quests. We had no idea who was coming, who was paying. I mean, we knew looking at the bank statement, but but why and how often did they pay? Did they pay every month? Did they pay once every 3 or 4 months? And actually, we discovered amazing things, as I said, and we're doing a lot of really cool things right now to level those off, create more continuity, and improve retention. So, as I say, that's just been this last year. There's still a ton of heavy lifting to be done, but I think come 2012, with most of these things in place, I think you're going to see RuneScape really kind of resurge back into popular culture and everything else.
Hi. You talked about Angry Birds being a dumbed-down mass-market version of Worms. Do you think that there's a prevailing industry within the games industry that mass market is dumb? And if so, do you think that leads to the lack of innovation that you were talking about? Yeah,
I mean, I didn't mean to be unkind. Let me just say that first. I love Angry Birds, and I've clocked it on all 4 platforms, as has my wife. It's a bit of competition. I think the word dumbed down is probably wrong. I think it's simpler forms. We used to have a team called Game Labs, who built, it was like a dedicated R&D game team. They could work on any platform, do anything. It was a skunk works. And they created funnel.com, where there's about 52 games on there. Some spiritual successes, where we thought we could improve. But the real remit of the team was never to make money. It was to create unique game mechanics, try new things. A real prototype shop for stuff, ... And everyone we hired, we said kind of the one ingredient is they've got to be gamers. They've got to have grown up, just like we did, hobbyist gamers, played most things, love or hate various things, because that's going to give flavor to this and it's going to give some authenticity to it. And what we found is, and we said, and they've got to be smart and all the typical things I think you say when you're hiring. and they made a lot of games. And we went, but why is this not, falling, or flying off the shelves rather? Why is this not breakthrough? This is better than this. This is better than that. And that obviously gets to my earlier point of actually don't just copy, innovate from new. But that team specifically, because they were core gamers, they were making games, and I always say this, but I now have to temper it. They were making games they wanted to play, so they were hard. They were, it was a cerebral exercise to engage with the content. And if you were like-minded, then it was great. And it was like unlike anything else out there. The problem was it was unpenetrable for most people because they just weren't as extreme or fanatical gamers. And of course, we had elements of our community that said this is the best ever, nothing like this has ever existed, who were real trophy hunters, and but we just didn't see anything near, even close to what RuneScape has become or some of our other games have become. And the reality was because it was actually just too hard. It was elegantly designed, it was perfectly balanced, all the things that you say matter for game design, but it wasn't accessible to even some of my friends, let alone my 8-year-old son or my wife or anything like that. And so it does sound unfair when you say it's dumbed down, but actually it's the wrong phrase. It's accessible, which typically means intuitive and kind of self-explanatory. You should be able to understand and engage with the content without even a tutorial. I think as soon as you have something that needs to explain to you how this works, you've probably already missed the first boat. And I think things like Angry Birds and Farmville, it's actually intuitive that you're going to put the little birdie on the catapult and shoot him off. And when you do, it's actually really visceral how much fun it is. And all of a sudden, you start deciding, different birds, different tactics, different trajectories. And that's why it's mass market. That's why it's successful.
Guys, one more question from there, and then.
Great presentation. So much there to latch on to. One of the themes that keeps coming back to me is the issue with how do you manage this kind of a business. Every organization struggles in every industry with how much of it is intuitive, sticking to sort of core principles, making games good, making content good, versus analytics, what we measure and what we try to performance manage. Right now in your presentation, the story is caught between stick to good content and success will come. But then there's also the elements of the story that, you better pay attention to certain things. Otherwise, you'll go awry. Is there any sense that you can convey about where the balance lies in your experience?
I'm sorry, but it is exactly as described. And so I think I can go on all day about good content and innovation and stuff like that. And I think when I speak of that, I speak as a consumer. I speak as someone who actually wants to play this, not just produce this. As you say, managing a 500-plus company and growing and millions of community, there's clearly a certain amount of rigor and discipline and analytics and everything else that you have to have just to be able to manage that effectively. So sadly, it's not as binary as one without the other. But what I would say, so analytics, billing mechanics, all these things have their place. If you produce content and you can't monetize it, unless it's charitable work, it's meaningless. It may be elegant, it may be great, but no one will know. You won't be able to have the money to market it, or it will never really live. So you have to be cognizant of that. But I would always say, first and foremost, that you start with the content. As in, you've got to make the fun. You've got to prove the fun. If you have the fun, things like, right, how do we monetize this? How are we going to understand what people are doing and do it better will flow. I think if you start saying it's going to be microtransactions, it's going to be A/B testing driven, it's going to be, and then say, what should we make? I think it's already doomed to failure. I think the problem is, I think it depends where your area of understanding is. I think professional managers, bankers or whatever else come from very strong analytical KPIs, measurement, discipline. So for them, that's the only bit of the conversation they want to have. Creativity is a veneer. It's irrelevant. Just make the fun, right? And then we'll monetize it like this, just like those guys did. And clearly that's a disjoint. But I think if you just, and we've done this ourselves, you just put a bunch of passionate gamers in a room and say, go do anything, just have fun. They will, but only for themselves. And so it is a balancing act. I don't think, I wish I could weight the equation. It's 20% here and 13% here. The reality is that even for us, it tends to oscillate. Right now, we've spotted big opportunities in terms of improvement, so it's getting more attention. I think we look at everything and just weigh and say kind of effort versus return, everything. Literally improving starting experiences or exit experiences versus just completely new content. And we look at it and say, what do we think we'll get from this? Is this about retention? Is this about new player engagement? And what's the weight of that? Do we think this is worth 1 million people? Free? Do we think it's worth 100,000 subscribers? Do we? And on that, we try and make decisions. So, because the problem is, it's almost the toughest decisions we have every day is deciding what not to do. We're never, ever short of, like, what do we do next? It's like, we've got so much to do. Which one's first? Which ones? And we've used this phrase, and it's a horrible management phrase. We're trying not to use it, but it just keeps coming in. But which of these initiatives will move the needle? Which of these will actually, and it may be in a retentive capacity, as in stops it going down, not just up. That has weight too. But that's typically how we make this decision. So we try and do it as impassively as possible, as analytically, as in vigorous debate among the team, pros, cons, and then obviously, kind of build the rosters out of that. But yeah, I really wish I could say more, that it was just as easy as that. The reality is there's 10 years of learning and mistakes that have probably got us to the balance we have today. And as we're bringing in new talent with expertise outside of our own, we're discovering things which are untapped opportunities, and we're giving those things weight. But coming back to one of my earlier points, at the same time, it's not knee-jerk. And that's probably one of the most important thing. And I know there's so much hype around mobile or social, and it's like, let's all go here. That's where the fun is at. And that to me is terminal. I think as soon as you oscillate right outside your comfort zone, it's fatal. So we look at that, we look at the opportunities, we kind of say, all right, let's start working our way towards that. Let's start, and externally you might say, that makes you slow. You're not responding to opportunities and things. And as a result, we keep a little crack team aside, which is called our rapid response team. And as we have a new opportunity, it would say, that was never planned. There's no space. Just like do it. Just grab it, do it now. Because we still want to be as agile as a two-man company. So we've gone from really structured waterfall type management systems. We've gone to kind of super agile scrums to nothing to and each of those has had their merit and pain. And we've kind of come to where we are now.